I've never been here before, just passing through on my way to Hartford.
You're a regular Jack Kerouac.
Welcome to So It's a Show, a podcast where we attempt to keep up with Lorelai and Rory's pop culture references on Gilmore Girls. I'm Kyla.
And I'm Taylor.
And we're hosting the show.
Hey, we're so excited to have you guys.
Yeah, this is how exciting. We're doing our first episode.
Yeah, so Kyla, tell me, how did you get into Gilmore Girls?
Okay, how did I get into this wonderful show? I remember watching the show when it was on TV, the WB, then the CW, and I mostly remember the later seasons. This is at a time when you could not just get on the internet the next day and watch an episode that you missed. So I definitely did not see all of them, and I remember when the season finale was airing, my sister and I were out with friends that night, and I wanted to get back, but she was driving, and we got back too late, and I missed the series finale, and I was so bummed. So I got back into it in college, freshman year, watched it with a friend, finished it, the whole series, senior year. So then I got to see the whole thing, which was awesome. And now I watch it, at random.
The dark days before we had DVR and all the wonderful things that we could use to catch up. Yes, Netflix, Hulu, all the wonderful things.
So how'd you get into it?
Well, I have a similar story to you in some ways. I watched a handful of episodes growing up and in high school, and actually in high school, some of my best friends had DVDs, and I came over just to hang out for a sleepover, and we ended up watching the finale, and I had only seen a handful of episodes before then, but I bawled my eyes out. I thought it was so moving. I loved the show. And so when I was in college, my mom remembered that I had said I liked the few episodes I saw of the show. And right before Christmas, I think this was my junior year of college, I guess our junior year of college, she found a good deal on Amazon for the first 2 seasons. And so she got it for me for Christmas. And on Christmas Day, we watched the first 9 episodes of season 1. And that became our go-to mom and sister activity. I have 2 sisters. And so the 4 of us, every time I would come home from college, we would watch Gilmore Girls. And we finished it in a little less than a year, I think. And now it's pretty much just on a constant rotation in our house. So right now we are in season 7, gearing up for the revival.
Nice. Wow, good timing. Wow, that is impressive. A year. You got through the entire show.
Yes, I think we binged seasons 3 and 4 in 1 week for spring break. We were pretty into it.
Wow. Well, I understand. It's a great show.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah. So we realized that we had a lot of questions about the references in the show. In other words, I never had any idea what they were talking about. Did you?
It really depends. It's funny because over the years, there are more and more references that make sense to me.
Right, definitely. But at the time, like when I was a kid watching this, I did not know who any of these people were or movies. So we want to dive into those and explore them and understand them and get a deep understanding ourselves and then share that with you guys.
Yeah, and we're not going to explore topics that most people are familiar with in the 21st century. So if they mention Britney Spears, we are probably not going to try and explain who Britney Spears is. We're not going to try and explain who Shakespeare is, although maybe they have some great reference to an obscure character from one of his plays that's worth explaining. But I think we all know who Shakespeare is. And then we're also going to try and experience all of these pop culture pieces. So we're going to read a work by an author, which is what we did today. We're going to watch a movie or watch an episode of a TV show, listen to someone's music. We're going to read up on the history. So we want to get to know these people and share that with you. And you may be wondering about the title of our show. So it's a show. This is actually a pop culture reference itself. You might have heard of this fun little quote from season 1, episode 14 of our favorite show, Gilmore Girls.
What are we watching?
The incomparable Donna Reed show.
What's in there?
A salad.
Salad.
Yeah, it's a quaint dish sometimes used to precede large quantities of pizza. It's for me.
Clearly.
So, who's Donna Reed?
What? You don't know who Donna Reed is? The quintessential 50s mom with the perfect 50s family?
Never without a smile and high heels?
Hair that if you hit it with a hammer would crack?
So, it's a show?
It's a lifestyle.
It's a religion.
So, yes, we are Dean in this situation. We are the ones attempting to keep up with Rory and Lorelai and follow all of their pop culture references. So, Dean, we feel you.
We really are Dean. We could have just called the show We Are Dean.
Except then, well, we'll get into this probably later as we get into more of the show, but I'm not sure as many people would want to listen then. Maybe that's just a hunch.
Yeah. All those non-Team Deaners would not care about this.
Yes.
So, all that said, we are not a spoiler-free zone. We will list the episodes that we're going to be talking about in the show notes, so you can make sure that you've already seen the episode that we're talking about so that we don't ruin anything for you. We're going to be, jumping around the series a little bit in order, just depending on what topics come up. So, let's get started.
Woohoo! Okay, so the first pop culture reference that we are going to be diving into on So It's a Show is the very first pop culture reference on Gilmore Girls. In Season 1, Episode 1, the very first scene, Lorelai is having this conversation with a man who's passing through, and he's definitely hitting on her in this first scene, to which she seems a little less than responsive.
Of course, that's how the first episode goes. Lorelai is getting hit on by a much younger man.
Yes, and it would be not a very exciting show if she found her true love in the very first scene, which,
No.
well, I guess her true love is in the very first scene, but,
Oh.
yeah, but it's not this guy, so let's take a listen.
Luke.
Yeah. 11. You make that look really good.
Oh, it is really good. It's the best coffee in town.
Oh, yeah? I'll have to get a cup.
Good plan.
Yeah, I've never been here before. Just passing through on my way to Hartford.
You're a regular Jack Kerouac.
Yeah. Hey, you mind if I sit down?
Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm meeting someone, so
I'm Joey.
Okay.
Jack Kerouac. A beautiful man, in my opinion. But maybe not as beautiful on the inside. But we'll find out. So he was a writer. He really became famous in the 1950s, died in 1969. He was only 47. He is known for his book, On the Road. Good quote from that. "Nothing behind me, everything ahead of me, as is ever so on the road." Jack Kerouac was a part of a group of writers called the Beat Generation.
So the Beat Generation, or the Beat Movement as it's also been called, started in the mid-1950s. It was a group of mostly male writers like Jack Kerouac and his friend Allen Ginsberg, and they were responding to a really conservative environment after World War II. They did poetry, they did prose, but whatever they did, they were trying to shock their readers and give them some sort of awareness of subcultures or marginalized groups. Ironically, they weren't as great about representing and respecting women, which is an interesting... Yeah, definitely.
Shocker.
But they were definitely trying to do something a little bit different than the mainstream. And the Beat Generation helped morph into the hippie movement.
And in an interview Kerouac did, it was about a year before he died, he was really trying to distance the Beat Generation from the hippie movement, because there's a lot of... The hippie movement was really looked down upon by at least the man who was interviewing him, for sure. But Beat movement and hippies shared this desire for rootlessness. They wanted to be on the move, which is what his book On the Road is all about, which is really what Lorelai was referencing when she talked to... What do we call him? The man in the cafe. The man in Luke's.
Yes, does he even have a name? That's what I want to... We should have looked this up, but he's so forgettable.
Yeah, he really is.
We'll
Let's
just call him
Mike.
Yeah, let's call him Mike.
So that's what she meant when she was talking to the forgettable Mike. But On the Road, his Jack Kerouac's book, it was about a 7-year journey that he took with friends who were all part of this Beat group. The journey was 7 years, and it wasn't to get to any destination. it was just to be not in a house. I mean, in the desert, they didn't care where they were. And the book, it took him only 3 weeks to write. 7 years, 3 weeks to write. I mean,
Wow.
yeah. He's known for writing really fast, and he would actually write on one long roll of paper so he wouldn't have to stop and switch a page.
That's ridiculous. Where do you even get paper like that?
Well, a guy did ask him in an interview where he got it because it was just so bizarre, and he just kind of he fumbled around at a stationery store.
Okay, I want to go to that store. That sounds awesome.
Kerouac really realized that he wanted to be rootless, be traveling after he married Edie Parker, which was unfortunate for her. Kerouac helped a friend cover up a murder, which, oh my word. So he was arrested and charged as an accessory to murder. So he married his longtime wealthy girlfriend so that she could bail him out of jail with her family's money. But it did not last, as you can imagine, as that is not a very romantic way to start. And she actually annulled it. It was her decision, and he went off and traveled with his friends and had all the experiences they had that inspired On the Road.
Yes, the Beat generation, their great reputation with women continues.
Wah, wah. It was the 50s after all. We did find a more obscure reference to On the Road in Gilmore Girls, and what episode was that?
I think it was season 5, episode 1.
Season opener, and they start another season with On the Road. I think they like this book. And there's a character in it named Dean Moriarty, and Lorelai decides that Luke is acting a bit like him.
Hey, it's me. Listen, I got a call from my sister and TJ. They're up in Maine, and they got into a little accident. Nothing major, just each one of them broke an arm and a leg. So anyhow, they can't run the Renaissance Fair booth for a couple of weeks. So they asked me to come help them out, and I unfortunately answered the phone, so I'm on my way to Maine. I'll be back in about a week. Okay? Bye.
Great.
Hey, it's me again. I'm not sure if we're at the point in this relationship where you actually need to know that much information about my whereabouts, so if we're not, I'm sorry. I could have just said I'm going out of town and I'll call you later, so I'm going out of town and I'll call you later. Me again, the idiot that leaves you 3 rambling messages on your machine. I just wanted to tell you I got a cell phone before I left, so, you know, you could call if you want, if you want, so that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, number might be good.
Thank you.
860-294-1986. Okay, bye. Just don't change your mind until I get back, okay? Okay. Talk to you later. Hello?
Well, if it isn't Dean Moriarty.
So Dean Moriarty was inspired by one of Kerouac's real-life friends, Neil Cassidy, and Dean, at the end of the book, ends up, he just goes mad, and he incessantly talks, just constantly talking, and does not wait for people to respond, which is exactly what Luke was doing when he left Lorelai, 3 voicemails, which is kind of ironic because Lorelai is the one who usually is talking incessantly, and Luke is a little more concise.
Yes. Except when he's yelling at Taylor.
Yeah, that is true. Then he has a lot to say.
Oh, yes.
But overall, I mean, just travel is the theme in Kerouac's books.
And he definitely talked about this in an essay I read of his from 1960. It's called The Vanishing American Hobo. And in this essay, he's lamenting that hobos and people who like to wander are being looked down upon by society. He tells this story about how he just wanted to sleep in the desert in his sleeping bag just because he wanted to. And the police showed up and they almost arrested him because they had trouble believing him that that's what he wanted to do. They just assumed there was no way he wasn't up to no good.
Huh.
Yeah, so I guess a guy who just wants to spend the night in a sleeping bag in the desert.
I would think that he was a little crazy myself, so I'm going to side with the officers in this case.
Yes, but it sounds like he wasn't up to no good, so good for you, Jack Kerouac. And in this essay, he uses all sorts of run-on sentences. He has a lot of long dashes between his thoughts and at the end of sentences. He sometimes skips punctuation, like apostrophes and contractions. It's pretty stream of conscious, so he does not follow the typical rules of grammar. I just want to give you a little taste of what this writing is like. So here are 2 sentences from this piece, just 2. There's nothing nobler than to put up with a few inconveniences like snakes and dust for the sake of absolute freedom. I myself was a hobo, but only of sorts, as you see, because I knew someday my literary efforts would be rewarded by social protection. I was not a real hobo with no hope ever except that secret eternal hope you get sleeping in empty boxcars flying up the Salinas Valley in hot January sunshine full of golden eternity towards San Jose where mean-looking old boys'll look at you from surly lips and offer you something to eat and drink too, down by the tracks or in the Guadalupe Creek bottom. Whew! Whew. That was 2
Wowza.
sentences. Thank you.
He just goes on and on and on.
Yes, lots of prepositional phrases. And
Good.
that is probably why in season 2, Paris and Jess have this conversation in Rory's kitchen.
A tragic waste of paper.
I can't believe you just said that.
Well, it's true. The Beats writing was completely self-indulgent. I have one word for Jack Kerouac. Edit.
It was not self-indulgent. The Beats believed in shocking people, stirring things up.
They believed in drugs, booze, and petty crime.
Well, then you could say that they exposed you to a world that you wouldn't have otherwise known. Isn't that what great writing's all about?
That was not great writing. That was the National Enquirer of the 50s.
You're cracked.
Typical guy response. Worship Kerouac and Bukowski. God forbid you'd pick up anything by Jane Austen.
Hey, I've read Jane Austen.
You have?
Yeah, and I think she would have liked Bukowski.
So now that we've done a little bit of a background check on Jack Kerouac, how does he fit into the world of Gilmore Girls?
Well, I definitely understand why Paris would say that. His writing is long. It's, yeah, I think that probably he didn't want to edit because it wouldn't match his style or, the way that he was thinking because he wanted it just to be continuous.
Well, and it totally makes sense that Jess would be his defender too. I mean, Jess is the guy who comes to town, and this is in season 2, so this is Jess who loves to stir up trouble. And so Jack Kerouac being his role model, I totally buy that.
Yeah. Jack Kerouac, all the Beats, as they're called, they were troublemakers. I mean, they just did what they thought was right when the rest of society really didn't agree with them. And you gotta admire that. I mean, they were coming out of a time it was really conservative. Everyone, there were lots of banned books that were taken out of libraries. All that censorship was going on. And they thought, hey, we have a lot to say. People should be allowed to listen to it.
And they definitely, I mean, the 1950s is sort of the cliche stereotype of conformity, and I know that in some ways that glosses over some of the complications of the 50s, especially with the Cold War and post-World War II drama. But I mean, that is what they were trying to break out from, which I think fits with Lorelai in some ways, trying not to fit into her parents' world. At the same time, the Beats also got some criticism because they seemed a little pretentious and trying too hard to be nonconformist and seem like they were trying too hard, which I think kind of fits with Lorelai's sarcastic response to Mike, aka not Jack Kerouac, who really went on the road for 7 years in this first scene of Gilmore Girls.
So I wonder if Lorelai almost said that to Mike longingly. Like, I wish that you were my Jack Kerouac.
I don't know that. I think that you give Mike a little too much credit.
Yeah, I think so.
Plus, we know that Lorelai ends up with a perpetual homebody.
That is true. That is interesting.
Although he does like to be outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's some of that. So he can be adventurous in the places that he's sleeping, considering how small his apartment was on his single bed.
Yes, I think he would sleep outside in a sleeping bag out in the desert.
Yeah, I think he would. So Lorelai, I'm going to say that this reference was fitting to who Lorelai is, and that she definitely might have read The Road. I think she would have enjoyed the long strings of thought, because that's how she talks.
Yes. And I'm sorry, but do you mean on the road, Kyla?
Oh my gosh. Am I still saying the road? Okay, and thank you for correcting me. On the road, folks. It is on the road. We are on the road.
We have been giggling about that as we have been prepping for this episode. And about how I want to sing Hit the Road, Jack, which...
Hit the road, don't come back no more, no. Oh, come on, you're gonna leave me hanging?
Oh, I was snapping along with you.
Oh, okay, hey, back up. No more.
What'd you say? Don't worry, guys. This isn't a singing podcast. We won't do this every week.
So, Taylor, with this explanation, how do you feel about that scene now? Does it make sense? Did it make sense before?
Well, I knew who Jack Kerouac was before we did this episode, but I didn't know as much about him, and I think that it gives me a deeper appreciation for some of Lorelai's sarcasm here. I think also knowing that this is the very first pop culture reference on the show is helpful for me, because it tells me Lorelai is not just... I guess at this point, when you're watching it for the first time, you don't know how entrenched in pop culture she is, but knowing this is the very first pop culture reference on the show tells me that she's not just surfacey pop culture or just what's trendy. She knows what is culturally significant, and she also knows what is in good taste and what is considered classic reading.
And she probably guessed when she looked at Mike that he would have no idea what she was talking about.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Well, that's our show.
Thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Yeah, this was super fun. High five, Taylor.
Woohoo! Thank you so much for joining us today, guys. And we would love to know what you think about our interpretation of this scene, and if we missed any Jack Kerouac references on the show, because we know that there are so many pop culture references, and we found several of them, but there might be more. If there's anything we missed or you want to add, feel free to tweet at us.
We're at So It's a Show on Twitter, and you can email us soitsashow@gmail.com.
Be sure to rate us and share a review on iTunes. We want to know what you want to hear about, and we want to know what you like and what we can work on. And the sooner the reviews come in, the better, because we can start meeting what you guys are interested in.
We want to hear about pop culture references that you want to hear about, so that we can talk about them with you.
Yes.
So I'm Kyla, and you can find me at Kyla Kathneidu. It's KYLACARNEIRO.
And I'm Taylor, and you can find me at tblake24 on Twitter. And we're going to send you out on one more Jack Kerouac reference from the trailer for the Gilmore Girls A Year in a Life Netflix revival. Hopefully you are binge watching today. We're dropping this episode the same day it drops on Netflix.
What up? Best day ever.
Whoop whoop.
Did we order Chinese, Greek, and Italian food last night?
And hot dogs.
Ugh, last night's a blur.
Hey, what did we end up watching?
Was it Baby Monitor Sound of Fear or Co-ed Call Girl?
No, I'd remember if we'd rocked a spelling.
Hey, they should make a Lifetime movie out of that poor Tory spelling falling at Benihana. Teppanyaki, Grill of Death. We have limited time. Should we skip the town tour?
We can't skip the town tour.
Well, we'll keep it short. There's a debate going on whether or not to take the phone booth out.
But where would Superman change when he comes to save our town from Ben Affleck?
I made the same excellent point.
I am not making tater tots.
Why not? We need sustenance.
You're eating tacos.
They're organic.
And I saw you grab those mini donuts, put them down right now.
Mom?
Oh, yes. Isn't it wonderful?
It's the whole wall. This is my time to be rootless.
And you're okay with this vagabond existence she's leading?
She's Jack Kerouac. She's on the roading it, past the peyote.
But after you pass the peyote, what bathroom will you use to throw up in?